Let's try that over again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. There you go. Couldn't get my words out correctly there. All right. Thank everyone for joining us already this evening. We'll give it a couple of minutes to see if a few more people will be joining us. But a lot has been taking place over the last week in the cases that we have been following. And looks like another case is on the precipice of becoming newsworthy. What is it with everyone trying to kill women? I just do not get it. Didn't their mom teach them anything? You don't hurt a woman. It's just the way it is. You don't hurt kids. You don't hurt women. That's just the way it is. All right. My name is Scott Reich. This is Crime Talk. You know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't. Like if you do. Leave me a comment. Give me a question in the comment section tonight, and we will do our best to answer it. It scrolls by pretty fast once things get rolling. We're not asking for them, not begging for them, but I would note that if you do the super chat, your question does get highlighted, and it increases the chances that we will get your question answered. All right. For those of you who may not have joined us before, my name is Scott Reich, and I'm a practicing criminal defense attorney here in the great state of Colorado. And January has been the start of my 23rd year of having my own practice, and 28 years as an attorney doing primarily criminal defense work over that time period. So I never want to say we always get it right, but have a pretty good idea of what is coming down the pike, so to speak, when these cases come about. We've handled all types of cases over the last 30 years. You name it, from the smallest little infractions that you can imagine all the way up to the most serious homicides over the years. So that's just, that's what we do. My practice, we have 5 attorneys in my firm. Like I said, primarily criminal defense. I have one attorney that does primarily civil work, some civil litigation, but it usually comes out of the criminal cases. So like I said, I think we have some pretty good perspective on what the heck we're talking about. We try not to speculate, but we can usually try to forecast what we anticipate coming down the pike. So obviously the Kohberger case is still pretty intense and in the news. We followed that literally from the beginning. We also talked about the Lori Vallo case. We've been talking about that one from the beginning. We got the Delphi murder case that we can talk about. We have court dates coming up on that really soon as well. And just a busy time. And that's why I really so dislike December, because it's a holiday season, and not because I'm a Scrooge or a Grinch. We love the holidays. Who doesn't love the holidays? But the reality of it is nothing gets done. The court's all but shut down. Everybody goes on vacation, and everybody comes up with a reason to put it off until the first of the year, whereupon it gets completely crazy and busy. So I thought my first of the year was going to be absolute chaos, because I literally was supposed to be in trial starting yesterday on a federal case. It got continued, not my request for continuance. I was ready to go. And then the following week after that, I was supposed to go to the other side of the state and do probably a 8 jury trial day racketeering case. Don't have to do that anymore. So that is there. Designed by Kayla. I see the comment. How would you defend old Brian Kohberger? Well, I did a video about that yesterday. I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought maybe YouTube was out to shadow ban me or something, but people have let me know apparently I am not the only one. It was very odd, because we've had our videos just been taking off, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of views in the last couple of videos we put up, and we put up yesterday's, and like, wow, something's not right. I think by the time I went to bed last night, there were maybe 6,000 views, and I woke up this morning, I had 3,000 views, and it was just weird. And I asked Frank when we got in this morning, I was like, what the heck is going on? And, did we get shadow banned? Did YouTube decide to hate us? What is up with that? And now it's starting to pick up. We mentioned in today, I think it was maybe just a YouTube thing, although I still think they oftentimes clearly want to drive us out of business here at Crime Talk, because most of the time, I'd probably say 75% of the time, our videos go out, we put them up, YouTube demonetizes us, and then usually within 24 hours, when we put up another video, they decide, hey, you know what? That video is really great after all. You can go ahead and be monetized. But since we do a daily show, and it's not like, we do daily topics, there's a lot of stuff there, but, most people come for the daily stuff. We have so many people like, oh, Scott, I cooked dinner. I listened to you on the drive home. So we really try to do that every day to make sure that it's there. All right, Frank, highlight for me the super chats here on the screen, and we'll take a look at that. And just a quick reminder, if you haven't become a Patreon member after this show, we'll do our Patreon show, and then you'll get the secret Crime Talk number where you can call in, ask me anything you want. We talk about whatever you want. Ron's Vintage Electronics. Do you think that Brian ordered the DoorDash to make it appear so someone else did the crime? I don't think so. From what I've understand, and I try to be as accurate as possible, is my understanding that they had information that the food was delivered, but I thought it came from Miss Gonsalves' phone, and she was up doing TikTok or something along those lines. So I don't think so. I don't have any information to do that, but that would there would be some sort of record on that, probably on his phone records. So we'd have to see. But I'm not aware, unless you can direct me something to Ron's Vintage Electronics. Let me know if there's something there, but I don't not aware of that. Wasn't there another super chat there, Frank? We can take a look at. This is Megan. Hi there. I was wondering who decides what defense attorney to appoint to someone like BK, and do all public defenders get paid the same? Well, good question, Megan. Now, I'm not going to say I know specifically how the system works in Idaho, but I believe they have a state public defender's office, similar to the situation that they have here in the state of Colorado. Normally, the public defender would represent anybody who is in custody. There is a presumption that you are indigent when you are in custody, and therefore the state then must provide you a defense attorney, and that is the public defender's office. Mr. Koberger's attorney now is a public defender. Everything that I've seen about her, apparently very good, very passionate about what she does, and it sounds as though he is in good hands, if that's what people want. I'm not sure. Some people don't want him in any good hands, but we want him to have a good attorney. All right. And the reason why we want him to have a good attorney is that if there is a conviction down the road, they can't say, oh, the attorney sucked, it was ineffective, etc. So that's good. So let's say there's multiple co-defendants, or let's find out the public defender finds out at some point, hey, we have previously represented a witness in this case. We have a conflict. Then the court will normally then appoint a private attorney who will be paid at a substantially reduced rate than what their normally hourly rate is, to represent a defendant. Hasn't arisen, that situation has not arisen in this particular case. And so Mr. Koberger will more than likely continue with the office of the public defender, unless and if he decides to retain private counsel. I don't think that's going to happen. His parents do not have the resources. At least they say they don't. And frankly, why should they? For lack of a better term, they're not the ones accused of quadruple homicide. So why should they completely drain their life savings to do that, other than, well, it's their kid? Koberger is a graduate student. Most students pretty darn broke. They're not going to have any money, and certainly whatever they have would be exhausted quickly. Most people don't realize how expensive attorneys can actually be when they are working on a case constantly. It adds up pretty quick. Let's just say they're charging you $400, $600 an hour, an experienced attorney in that regard. You go back east, New York attorneys, some of them are charging, I've heard, up to $2,000 per hour. I don't know about you, but I can't afford a $2,000 per hour attorney. Some days I feel guilty about charging my rate, but not that much, because that what you get is, you're not paying for just an attorney, you're paying for their experience, and you're paying for their experience that this is what they do. This is what they do, is go try cases. And frankly, if it all works out, it's worth every penny. And if it doesn't work out, you know what? You have tried everything and you left no stone unturned. All right, let's see. We got another super chat up there at the top. Uncivil Law. Happy New Year. Uncivil Law. He has a great channel. You should go check it out. Happy New Year to you. We need to coordinate a time to do a show together. There's lots to talk about. All these cases we've been following. It's a lot of stuff going on. And, we just found out just the other day that Lori Vallo has all but let us know who is responsible for the death of Tylee and JJ. We can certainly talk about that in a bit. We'll get through the super chats, and then we'll talk about the Kohberger case as well. LG, what is the one piece of evidence that law enforcement might discover that we don't know about yet? Again, BK, that you would be the hardest to dispute? Well, like I said, not to keep driving you to the video that we did yesterday, but like I said, YouTube screwed it up so bad yesterday. Frankly, I think that video should have got about 1 million views because it was so good. Because we talk about it. Basically, people ask, hey, Scott, if you were going to represent Kohberger, what would you do? And so I laid it out. I went through everything that I thought would be quite relevant that one would need to do. I guess we can kind of go over that briefly. Obviously, the big one is the knife. You got the DNA, right? We're not going to show the knives because we thought maybe that messed it up. But so, as I've mentioned before, in a previous life, a long time ago, I know you said, Scott, you don't look a day over 25. How could you have actually been out of the military now for 23 years? I know it's hard to believe. But it's true. But when I was on active duty in the reserves, I had what was affectionately known as a K-bar. And there it is in its sheath. So for those who haven't seen it, the video, we go into it much greater detail. But here's the sheath, all right? The biggest piece of evidence that the government says they have is the little button, right? Somebody snapped it. That's where they say they were able to take a swab and develop a unknown DNA sample there at the house, because the sheath was found apparently between two of the deceased. Now, you would think if somebody knew what they were doing, the sheath, as you can see, you could put it through a belt so you don't drop it, so that when you had your knife and you're done with it, you could put it back in there. Apparently that didn't happen. So that's going to be the biggest problem. So we talked about the defense is going to need a DNA expert. And what is going to have to be looked at from the defense perspective is, okay, you took DNA samples. There's been a lot of word that's come out. We've seen videos where this house was a party house. In fact, there were people in the house when the residents of the house were not at the house when a party was going on. There were actually strangers there talking to the police when the police shut it down. And I can't remember if it was Kaylee that somebody was called. One of the victims was called and said, oh yeah, we'll come back and shut it down. So I think the big thing the defense is going to look at is okay, fine. We know you probably took samples, and a lot of the blood is going to come back to the deceased victims, obviously. But there's mixtures. We know that the crime scene investigators were in that house for several days. They were probably swabbing, documenting so many pieces of evidence, surfaces where somebody could have touched to see if there's DNA. And if they didn't, guess what? The defense is probably going to make a bunch of hay about that and say, well, there's a burglary. Somebody come in. Did you swab the back door? Did you find this? All those, they're going to say, okay, how many other DNA profiles were developed from that particular residence? And, they're going to say, okay, obviously makes sense. Sheath. Most people don't drop their United States Marine Corps K-bar sheath unless, you were there to use it, right? Now there's reports today that we talked about in today's video that Kohberger went back. They believe that he may have went back, and there's video. We put it in today's video that shows a white car, a similar white car. Can't say for certain that it was him, that maybe was driving by early in the morning. I mean, it's the kind of thing where he's like, the police aren't here. Maybe do I go in? Do I get my sheath? I mean, we'll give him the presumption of innocence because he's entitled to that. But let's just say hypothetically that was the case, right? So they got the, did he go back in? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So they got the DNA. That is probably, in my humble opinion, the biggest problem that the defense is going to have to deal with. You have to be able to explain, how did this guy who has no connection with these girls, apparently, at least that we know, how did your DNA just happen to get on a knife sheath, and all the girls were allegedly killed with a sharp metal object? Possibly one that fits like this, right? So that's going to be the biggest bad piece of evidence. And we talk about that in the video. You all right? We do it quite a bit. Sometimes we do it as a group of attorneys in our office. We literally say, all right, here's the bad facts. We put it up on the board. Here's the good facts. Then we try to figure out, how do we move the bad facts to the good facts? What can we do to turn that bad fact in there? How do you turn DNA that just happened to be there? Well, a lot of people in and out of that house. You bring in your DNA expert to talk about transfer of DNA. Let's face it. If I were to hand this item over here to Frank, our producer, cameraman, and all-around great guy, the hardest working man in show business, hand it to him, and then the cops were to come in and say, hey, we're going to do a swab of that after Frank touched this object. Don't show it. That's right. They would probably, when they developed those DNA profiles, have a mixture of that DNA profile. And then you're going to have a minor contributor and a major contributor and a minor contributor. Just kind of means what it is. If you were to mix together a little bit of ketchup and a little bit of mustard, and there's more ketchup in there, that's the major contributor. And minor contributors, what's left over in the mustard. And so they have to decide, okay, how did he get there? But like I said, how many other unknown DNA samples, right? They're going to take those, they're going to develop those profiles, and they're going to say, we have the known profile of all the 4 deceased victims. They've developed those. Then how many other profiles were developed? How many mixtures were there? Basically, all those become potentially alternate suspects. But once again, how did allegedly Kohberger's DNA wind up on a sheath similar to this, a K-bar sheath? Because, we try to bring you the facts here at Crime Talk. And, like I said, just happened to have mine from long, long time ago. And I brought it in. Okay. Kohberger, although he doesn't have to prove his innocence, some explanation is going to have to be made as to how possible. Did he have him come in contact with somebody, or did he own that? But did he sell it at at a flea market? Did he sell it online? You just never know. All right, let's go to the next question. Jody Vukmir, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hey, Scott, can you delve into a little bit more the latest of the Vallo Day Bell motions? As in, do you think they're going to take an agreement? Not sure if I said that right. Good question. So Lori Vallo's attorney filed a motion just the other day. Let me see if I have it here in front of me, because I have my stack of stuff. We have the Chad Day Bell pile, Lori Vallo pile over here. We have the Koberger pile here. And then we have the Delphi homicide case over here. And so that I have my stack of stuff so that I can keep track of everything. Now, no, it was the motion yesterday they filed the motion to alibi, their notice of alibi. Also, they filed a motion basically to have a visit between the two co-defendants, Lori Vallo and Chad Day Bell. And apparently they've only had one conversation over the phone since they've been arrested. And in the motion to meet and confer with the clients in a joint status, the attorney for Laura Vallo basically states, hey, this is really important because basically we have some deadlines that are coming due and we need to talk and see about, it seems as though there's possibly an offer on the case. We'll have to wait and see. Frank's trying to pull that up here, but that's significant. And, obviously the defense cannot communicate with each other. They're co-defendants. We know Chad Day Bell's defense is to possibly throw Lori Vallo under the bus, definitely Alex Cox under the bus. And Lori Vallo's defense is to throw Alex Cox under the bus. For those who aren't familiar with the case, Alex Cox is the brother of Lori Vallo, who died mysteriously shortly after Lori Vallo's previous husband, Charles, was killed by Alex Cox. And basically the notice of alibi says that when JJ and Tylee were killed on the date at issue, she was with, she lists a couple of people. I don't have it right in front of me. And one of them was Chad Day Bell. I can't believe the lady's name, and one other person. When the children were in Alex Cox's apartment, basically saying, Alex Cox did it. Alex Cox did it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. So the attorneys want to meet because apparently it sounds like there's been some sort of offer that they need to talk about, or maybe some sort of joint strategy for trial that they want to talk about. Is there going to be a motion to continue? As you may recall, Lori Vallo last time said, hey, I know I just got out of the state mental hospital for the last 10 months, but I want to exercise my right to a speedy trial, which was in 6 months from the date that she entered a plea of not guilty. Chad Day Bell had already waived speedy trial, and then under Idaho is allowed to set it out basically as far as they want. And what's the word I'm looking for? They don't want to go to trial together, but the court's kind of making them go to trial. And they're supposed to start it in trial in April. Decisions need to be made. Decisions need to be made. And sometimes, when you have a multi-co-defendant where there's husband, wife, where there's family members, you need them to talk. Like, okay, you're going to take the hit on this case, and, I'm going to roll out of here just fine. I don't think that's going to happen on either one of them, but you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes they need to hear it from the other side saying, hey, you never call, you never write. I've moved on. Sure, we had some good times together, some bad times. We laughed, we cried, but I just don't think it's going to work out. Who knows? Maybe that's what the nature of the conversation will be. And now, one of them will say, and by the way, I'm probably going to roll over on you and become a witness for the state. Kind of nice to know if the court is going to grant that. And like I said, the big thing was the notice of alibi. Lori Vallo finally let us know she knows who killed her children, and yet still was unable to provide any explanation up to this point as to why she was running off getting married while the rest of the United States was looking for her children. She was in Hawaii with Chad Day Bell, just weeks, if not a month after his wife mysteriously died. And then within weeks, he gets married to Lori Vallo. I mean, sometimes you just can't fight it like that, I guess. Your husband dies. Or your wife dies. Yep. Let's get married within 2 weeks. No one would see that as suspicious, would they? No. Particularly when your children are missing. It's almost like you wanted your single life back again. So hopefully that answered the question there in the super chat. Bittersweet. Hope you're doing well, Scott. Thank you. Hope you're doing well too. What are your thoughts on the 48 hours already releasing a full special on the suspect? Bittersweet Heart 46 and 2. I don't believe they're going to be able to offer much information more than what we already know. And we've kind of talked about it. I think I saw something today where somebody was like, I dated him 7 years ago, which would have made him like 20 or something like that. Or the guy's like, I went to high school with him and he was a bully and he was mean to me. And, I just find that of little interest to me at all. Maybe that's because I'm thinking about this case from an attorney perspective. It only matters what they can prove. I don't care if the guy was the biggest bully at his high school or if he was the nicest kid ever and used to pick up spiders and drop them outside so that they wouldn't get stepped on or something when the bell rang. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And so many times in a criminal case, everybody is all hung up on, well, they couldn't have done it because they're such a good person, or, oh, he's a bad person. They look for all this stuff, what they refer to as character evidence, good or bad. It doesn't come into evidence, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that. The court system, maybe it's sentencing, could give two craps about whether you're a good person or a bad person. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what is charged and did the defendant do it? That's it. Did it happen or not? Well, not like, oh, he's always been such a good kid. Judge, I got a letter from his mom here saying he's always been such a good kid. We stand by him. Well, I would hope your mom would stand by you. Doesn't condone what you've done, but she's there. You hope that takes place. I had lots of cases where that doesn't happen. Done lots of trials over the years where I was appointed by the court, homicide, serious case, and nobody for the defendant shows up at all. It doesn't matter. A defendant is required by law only to be charged by and consider evidence as it relates to the charges before the court. Now, like all things in the law, there's an exception to every rule. It's the first thing they tell you in law school. This is the law, but remember, there's always an exception. So yes, character evidence doesn't come in, but what they refer to as 404B evidence can come in, which is evidence of other crimes, wrongs, misconduct, but it has to be kind of specifically tied to the situation at hand to bring in this other stuff. And it has to be for a specific intent to show motive operandi, absence of mistake, something along those lines. So let's say, for example, and I have no evidence of this, but let's say Brian Koberger, as a young man, had a previous girlfriend, and he had done something involved a sharp metal object. That could possibly come in. That is probably, what comes in is what they refer to as 404B evidence, because it shows something a little bit more than just, hey, he's a bad guy. He did something in the past, therefore he must be guilty of it here in the future. So there's a fine line. The judge would have to look at it and say, well, oh, look, he's had a situation like this where maybe he did something. Okay. And just hypothetically, I'm just giving you an example in the case that involved let's say blonde female, sharp object that maybe rebuffed him or he became infatuated with, something along those lines. Then that could possibly come in as 404B evidence. But even then, the analysis doesn't stop there. The court then has to look at it and say, well, under what they refer to as 403, although it's relevant, it could go to prove or disprove a charge in this case. the prejudicial effect is too great, and therefore the prejudicial effect outweighs its probative value, and therefore I'm not going to bring it in. Now, where I practice, it seemed like in the last couple of years, we had a bunch of cases. We saw it in the Bill Cosby case, kind of in the Weinstein case as well, where they bring in all these people that aren't charged to say, oh, the same thing happened to me. Cosby was reversed on some other grounds, but it was kind of the same thing. Like, you can't just bring all these people and say, bad guy. He must have been bad guy in this state too. Okay. But they did that in, that guy named Harvey, the former movie mogul case as well. And I don't think he had any much release, but I think they're appealing to the Supreme Court, or whatever they call the high one. In the Supreme Court is the low one, and something in New York it's opposite. Basically, everyone else's Supreme Court equivalent there. And that's going to be one of the issues. As a defense attorney, my general feeling is, hey, if you have such a weak case and you want to bring in 404B evidence, that just tells me you can't prove this case on your own. So, and most of the time, judges are keeping it out because cases are coming back where, of course, like, this is not, for a specific purpose, absence of mistake, modus operandi, not just, it has to be very specific and narrowly tailored under the law. And if they bring in for some other purpose to show bad character, they've been getting reversed. And so I think a lot of judges are saying, hey, why are we going to risk this? Why are we risking this? So remember, if a DA wants to bring in 404B evidence, it usually means they have a weak case. Okay. Just my perspective on that. All right. Do we have another one? Uncivil law. Has jurisdiction been proven for the record in the Idaho case yet? Laugh out loud. I would say yes. Obviously I have to show that the elements of the charges are that. Let me just pull them up here, pull it from my stack of stuff. The charges read, count 1, burglary at the defendant, Brian Kohberger. And remember, identity is the most important part of any criminal case. And that is what they have to prove. That's what the DA is going to try to prove through the DNA, through phone records, because they do not have somebody as an eyewitness, so to speak, because the young lady that was in the room that said she saw a figure that had a mask on, had bushy eyebrows, that's not really an identification. She can't go into court. And we talk about this in the video we did yesterday. One of the motions that I would file if I was representing Kohberg is no in-court identification from the roommate that said he had on, he was this height, this build, and he had bushy eyebrows. Doesn't come in. She can testify to what she saw, but she can't look at the courtroom, that big courtroom moment, and say, Miss Witness, based upon everything that you've testified here today, do you recognize and identify the man who you saw that night in the courtroom here today? That's a big moment. And the witness goes, he's right there, sitting at the defense table where it says defendant, surrounded by all these attorneys. And he's the only guy that's not an attorney or doesn't look like the attorney. That'd be improper. So I would move for that. So identity, we talked about that. So Kohberger, on or about November 13th in Lake Talk County, state of Idaho. We know that the bodies were found. The house is located in Lake Talk County. It was then and is now in Lake Talk County. And they'd have to prove that it was done unlawfully, which means without legal permission of justification, entered a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. And then we have all the other charges as well. Once again, that Brian Kohberger, on or about November 13th, 2022, in Lake Talk County, state of Idaho, did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and with malice aforethought, kill and murder We have account for Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Zaina Kernodal, as well as Ethan Chapin. So I think they'll be able to establish a jurisdiction there in the great state of Idaho for sure. But thanks for the $5 there, Uncivil Law. We appreciate you as well. And everyone should go check out his channel. Very, very smart guy. Good conversation. We need to get him back on the show indeed. TN, what do you think will come out during Richard Allen's hearing on Friday as far as discovery? Well, it could be really, really good. This is set for the preliminary hearing that he's entitled to. Don't know if the defense is going to ask for more time to prepare, review the discovery, conduct their own investigation, etc., or if they're going to go. I'm a firm believer. Each case is different. I don't want to say, like I said, we say in law, this is the law, this is the general rule, but there's always an exception to it. You want to be prepared. I know some people that are always prepared. They're never prepared for anything. Just need more time. Eventually, you got to go try the case. Eventually, you got to go to the hearing. A preliminary hearing, 90, and in most states, the way it works is if you're charged with a serious offense, you remain in custody. So the preliminary hearing is a screening device to make sure that probable cause exists, where the defendant basically is present, gets to ask a couple of questions, etc., cross-examine the witnesses to see if probable cause exists. But remember, it's in front of the judge, who either A, already found probable cause, or B, his colleague did. So chances are pretty unlikely that the preliminary hearing is going to get bound over because the legal standard is so low. Probable cause: would a reasonable person believe that a crime was committed and the defendant may have had something to do with it? Pretty low standard of proof. On top of that, all the evidence must be viewed in the light most favorable to the prosecution, drawing all inferences in their favor. Let me give you an example. I once had a case where a client was accused of doing something that involved, it was kind of a questionable ID, but the victim was a police officer. Police officer said, "Oh, I know that guy. He has that very distinctive tattoo on his neck." And I'm like, "Hey, you can get those tattoos anywhere, man. Thinking about getting one myself right here, right?" Anyway, my guy was out of state on the date that this allegedly took place. So at a preliminary hearing, we did something that I've only ever seen done once, and that was by me. Put his client on the stand at the preliminary hearing to testify as to his alibi with proof showing, here's my hotel receipt, here's my airline ticket, there and to and fro, and came back. And the judge is like, oh my. Well, this is obviously a difficult decision for the court. It shouldn't have been. But the court said, I have to view the evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecution, drawing all inferences in their favor. Clearly, my client was not in the state at the time of the offense, but the legal standard, the case got to go forward. Now, the court did say, clearly this case needs a little further investigation. And they investigated it, and ultimately it was dismissed. But since the victim was a police officer, the district attorney felt very compelled to thoroughly investigate the case. I give you that example to show that cases don't get thrown out of preliminary hearing, even when your client is innocent. Normally, when somebody is in custody, they're entitled to a preliminary hearing. 99% of preliminary hearings are waived because you know what the probable cause is. And unless there is some unique issue that you're trying to use as a tool of discovery, you're more than likely going to waive. The detective gets up, he regurgitates his affidavit for arrest warrant where the court found probable cause, and you get asked a couple of questions, and then you move along. That's it. That's all it is. And usually the offer relayed by the district attorney, that's usually kind of the first time in a preliminary hearing, the district attorney will come up and say, hey, I'll make you this offer, reduce the charge, agree to probation. But if your client doesn't waive the preliminary hearing, the offer is withdrawn forever. Like, okay, fine. It's a starting point. We move on. So 99.9% of the cases don't go to preliminary hearing. There's always the one guy who's like, oh, we're going to hearing. I'm not waiving anything because I knew somebody that got screwed and they want their preliminary hearing. Like, okay, fine. You want your preliminary hearing? Let's go to preliminary hearing. It usually takes about 10 minutes. Sometimes it's a good 10 minutes. Sometimes you have to explain to the district attorney, keep the offer open. This could be the best 10 to 20 minutes we spend throughout this entire case so that the client can see what the evidence is going to be against him, because somehow he doesn't believe it when he just sees it on the paper or when I explain it to him. Usually the idea is like, I get it. Okay. Some are like, no, if he goes to preliminary hearing, I'm going to, no, there's no offer. And really? Like, I've heard that before. Really? Okay, whatever. Of course you'll make an offer if something changes. Get over yourself. Really? But like all things, general rule, 99% of them are waived. Also, as a general rule, 99% of preliminary hearings in a homicide case go to preliminary hearing. I cannot think of a preliminary hearing that I have waived in a homicide case. Got one where I'm seriously thinking about it. I don't know what's going to happen. It's not my call ultimately, but usually you go. So here we got Richard Allen. And for those who aren't familiar with the case, he is the man accused in the Delphi murders of killing the two young girls that were found in Delphi, Indiana. Going back, 5-6 years now. And it turns out he went to the police and said, hey, coincidentally, I was there that day at about that time. I'm coming forward to tell you I was there, but that wasn't me. And apparently some contractor for the FBI missorted or misidentified where that interview should go. And it wasn't until the police started going through it 5 years later, 6 years later, because everyone's like, oh, it's a cold case. It's going away. They're like, hey, we should go talk to this Richard Allen guy. Then apparently they found a round from a firearm that was cycled through a gun. Wasn't fired, but cycled through. They find a gun at his house. They say, it's a match. Your bullet was there. So it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be televised, but I hope it goes and we are able to get more information as about what took place. I mean, frankly, a bullet cycling through a mass-produced firearm, not that concerned about it. Unless they can show, and once again, the young ladies, it appears, we don't know exactly for sure, the cause and manner of death has not been revealed, but pretty good indication that involved a sharp metal object, not a firearm from what we know. So, unless they have the smoking gun knife, so to speak, in the Delphi case, I think it's going to be a difficult case. Listen, each case is different. You never know. Normally what you think is going to take place is what takes place. Do the police get it wrong? Yeah, most of the time they, have a pretty good idea what happened. Do they always get it right in the sense that they know? Yeah, but there's lots of cases out there where they got the right guy, but the prosecution just can't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. But that's the way our system is set up, right? It is set up basically to operate under the presumption that it's better to let 10 guilty men go free than one innocent man or woman be convicted for something they did not do. And maybe sometimes, like I said, I get a little too, what's the word I'm looking for? Callous, perhaps? At the end of the day, and that's why some of these, I love a lot of these channels out there. Don't get me wrong. We've been on a lot of them. But they just want to sit and speculate all day long. And, in my busy life, I don't have time. I need facts, law, and how do we move from there? Good, bad, or ugly, let's make a decision. And as an attorney, that's the only thing that matters. I mean, it's like, okay, I have clients come in. Hey, you got a great case, or you got a terrible case. It doesn't really matter what I think about the case. It only matters what I can prove in a court of law. What legal and competent evidence can be admitted so that a jury can consider it. That's the only thing that matters. We sit around a lot talking about cases in our office here. Like, okay, that's great. That's interesting. But how do I get that into evidence? Who do I have to call as a witness to get that in? And usually if it's the client is the only person, it makes it a little more difficult. As a general rule, right? Always exception to that general rule. You try to not put your client on the stand. What other evidence can we put forth from other people that we can get out what our client would say? Just a general rule. And those are the kinds of things you have to, consider. And looking here at a chat, can you go to the one right below that, Frank? It says, I was appointed an awesome pro bono lawyer. My daddy was working pro bono, but he probably got paid some exorbitant fee, like $50-$60 an hour. And looks like Life's a Joke was facing 7 years in prison. He got it cut down to 8 weekends in county jail and a small fine. I was very guilty of the crime as charged. And well, Life's a Joke. I'm glad that worked out. It sounds like you got a court-appointed attorney, whether he was getting a small stipend from the court. Some states do it differently. Some pay by the hour at a substantially reduced fee. Some cases are, it's a flat fee. Like here, you get a felony case, it's $2,500. Wow. But like I said, you're billing $400-$600 an hour. In your normal life, that $2,500 isn't going very far. Now I can tell you, we still take those court-appointed cases here in my firm. Some of my associates do kind of the more sometimes routine matters. I do usually the ones involving homicides, serious allegations of some sort of misconduct. Usually, you know what I'm talking about. And the more serious stuff, because that's where the interesting stuff goes on. Because most people can't afford good old homicide. I think we've got probably 6 homicides going on right now. 6. So, it's just, some people don't like to do them. Some people just don't like to do them. Too much stress, too much risk. They feel as though, I like them. Give me the hardest, most difficult case. I say, let's go take it on. Let's go do it. Somebody asked me that question in the chat earlier today, and the question is like, Scott, I've never known a criminal defense attorney. Is there anyone you would ever not represent? And I can't think of one that I've said, oh, that's too gruesome, that's too horrible of a crime. I would represent them. Usually now what turns it down is people don't have the money. Every now and then we have clients that, the spidey senses tingle, and it's like, man, I'm just not in the mood. I don't care how much money you have. I'm just not in the mood for this. It's going to be too exhausting. The retainer is $1 million. Just not worth it. Go ahead and click on the next one there, Frank. Daisy. This hasn't been asked, came on late, but how harmful to the prosecution is an 8-hour delay and friends at a crime scene prior to 911? Well, it just depends if somebody had access to the crime scene. Obviously, the best case scenario is that when a crime is committed, the police are notified immediately. It is isolated from the rest of the people, and there's no contamination. People coming in, people coming out, animals walking around. Think of all the hypotheticals you could come up with. I know the dog was in there, but like the K-bar on the sheath. Maybe I had that K-bar. Yeah, I was walking in the woods, and one day I went camping. It was gone. The dog must have picked it up, dragged it in. Who knows what explanation there could possibly be to do that? But if the crime scene was immediately sectioned off, and do not get me wrong, I am not blaming the young lady that didn't know what the hell was going on, and kind of I don't want to say panicked, froze, whatever I think they used in the affidavit. I think froze. This house, people coming in and out. She's not sure what she hears, but hey, it's a dude. Maybe her friends went to the bar earlier. Somebody hooked up. I mean, like, do you think you need to call the police immediately? No, you're just like, I'm like, that dude freaked me out. None of my friends or roommates were up there. And sometimes these roommates are not the best of friends. I think all 6 of them got along pretty well. We've seen photos, but hell, how many times have you seen friends and kids these days that they're all, oh, we're best buds. Oh, look at it. We're so happy together. And, it turns out they don't really like each other. They don't really know each other, but they all do their little Instagram poses all at that minute. Hey, we're having fun. Right. So I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, Daisy. The reality of it is that the defense, if there was some sort of contamination, if there was something that completely, what's the word I'm looking for? Completely contaminated the crime scene, the defense is going to let us know if something took place. But the reality of it is probably nobody knows exactly what took place. As far as, if anybody else came in, I'm assuming nobody else did, but I can't sit here and say nobody else did in fact come in. I can't. I mean, like I said, there's video of this house where people were partying when the residents of the home wasn't even there. Can you imagine the amount of DNA that they're going to find in that house? I think it'd be mind-blowing if the police did it correctly, which I'm assuming I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt to saying the police did it. Think about all the DNA. It's a home, but it sounds like it was basically, an open space, so to speak. Imagine if you went and did a swab for DNA, may not be able to come up with a full profile, but all the different DNA profiles in a public space where people touch the door, open the door. Think about it. How did it get there? Somebody touches this, they pick this up. I mean, transfer. But don't get me wrong. Kohberger's got some problems. From what we know, unless there's a plausible explanation for it, what are the odds that your DNA just happens to wind up on that little button on the sheath for K-bar? What are the odds? Oh, they're going to tell them, like 1 in 656 quadrillion. That's usually what it is. You have to ask how many zeros is that behind the, like, wow, that's pretty, what are the odds? So that's his biggest problem there indeed. And then you got to deal with all the phone stuff. All right, let's go on to the next question, if there is one. It contained touch DNA. Well, how do you best subscribe this? Somebody keeps sending, this the other day, touch DNA, Scott, you should know better, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of like, what was it? The while back, there was like the high velocity blood splatter. And I was like, silly old me doing this 28 years, can't think I've seen a single case where there's been a high velocity blood splatter. And so then I go to a couple of my books here regarding forensic pathology, and they literally give like 2 sentences on high velocity blood spatter. But all these people who've never tried a case a day in their life, not a crime scene investigator, never been to a crime scene in their life, are telling me what an idiot I am for crime scene blood splatter. And so now everyone's like, oh, it's touch DNA. Well, as I understand touch DNA, it's known as trace DNA. And that's simply a method for analyzing a crime scene, right? You touched it. But just because you touch it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have DNA. Everybody keeps talking about this touch DNA. because it only requires a very small sample of the skin cells that leave the object of the person on the object. That's what that's what the DNA is. Everyone asks, like, it's touch DNA, Scott. It's not. Yes, you can get DNA from hair, but normally it's from dead skin cells. I've also seen it from saliva, obviously, cigarettes. I don't know what it is. I swear I don't know what it is. There for a while, we had all these cases. They were burglary cases. And when DNA was coming in, they were swabbing all of these old cigarette butts found at a crime scene, because the homeowner would come home like, hey, my house was stolen and I found a cigarette butt here in the living room. I don't smoke. So they collected it, thing of evidentiary value. And then somebody's, they would do the DNA profile, they put it through CODIS, and they would charge all these people because it stayed on the saliva, the skin cells DNA there. That's what it is. And so touch DNA it's trace DNA. It's not like you're taking it from a blood sample that you're drawing. It's transferred from your person. You could get it here. I could touch this table in front of me. Okay. Then, like I said, Frank, the Hardsburg Man show business, come over here, touch the table. Have you, YouTube subscribe, come here and touch the table. And they take a known DNA profile of us, so we know what my DNA profile is. They come here, they do a swab, they do what they do, they develop a DNA profile, whether it's a mixture between all of us touching it, or maybe I'm the dominant one since I sit here more often than not. It just depends. Who knows? I mean, there's so many ways. Let's say Koberger, he's looking for an outdoor knife. He's living in Washington now, going to be Mr. Outdoorsman. Never know when you need a knife. I mean, let's face it, every guy needs a knife. You never know when you're going to need it. So he goes to the store. Hey, let me look at that. That's nice. Oh, this snap is a little hard. I don't like this snap. It's so hard. It's just a little sticky. I think I'll go with that knife over there. And maybe the real killer went and got it. See, you get into speculation. I don't like doing that because you can't prove it. So, and that's what it gets into. But touch DNA, everyone acts like it's touch DNA, Scott. Yeah. So what? Most of it is. When your car gets stolen, what do? They swab the steering wheel when they recover it. It's touch DNA. It is simply the stuff from the skin cells left on the object, the sweat, the oils from DNA. It's not, yes, they're not taking it from the hair. They're not taking it from blood. It's from skin cells, right? If you have real dry skin and you shake it over there, they're probably going to have more DNA than if you have soft, silky skin, right? So, good question. Christian Rain? So that's touch DNA. Hopefully that explains it, because so many people are like, well, Scott, it is touch DNA. Like that's some overwhelming. Now, if it was blood, if it was DNA taken from a blood sample, then I'd be like, oh man, this dude is toast. And that would be consistent with going through, cutting the hand on the knife, something along those lines. Touch DNA, a little more realistic. Transfer, right? Like if I stand in front of the podium, I mean, I use this example in court. We're talking about DNA. Okay, we have a mixture, we have a sample. How does it get there? So, Ms. DNA expert, Mrs. DNA expert, I'm touching up here. The prosecutor's done it. And if there's a crime committed, they can come swab this and they could do that. Yes, it could. The oils, the skin, all that stuff. Not as compelling as if, say, it's blood DNA, like a true match, where they do the little buccal swab, where they get the little fancy Q-tip. It's a long Q-tip with a little Q-tip at the end. And they put it in the mouth and they swab around. And then they put in a little thing and they break it off and they put it in an envelope and say, that's good enough, which always surprises me. You think this very sensitive DNA, they put it in a little plastic sleeve, like a little sheath. They put it in there, break off the top, fold it, put it in the thing and say, yep, here's your DNA sample. It's always hilarious. They do the DNA sample all the time. We're asking for a 41-1 motion to get your client's DNA. Okay. It's a big it's a big production, huh? Now it's like, okay, yeah, I'll send my investigator. Don't talk to my client. So Anyway, touch DNA. I got lectured by somebody the other day. It's touch DNA, Scott. It's touch DNA. It doesn't really matter. His DNA was there. The only thing that matters is how did it get there? The defense, if the prosecution, probably the prosecution is going to say it's there, right? Think about a case where there's an allegation where something of a sexual nature took place. One person said it was consensual. The other person said that it was not. And, somebody goes and they have an examination done and they do their kit and they get the sample and they test it and they say, your client's DNA is there. And you say, well, I would expect it to be. It was a consensual encounter. So you can explain the DNA away. It's not that big a deal. So just because they have DNA, you have to, it depends on the circumstances, right? So many cases, well, they found DNA in his house. Of course, you'd expect to find his DNA in your house. I would expect they find DNA in your house. So it depends on the circumstances. Like I said, I'm not making excuses for Coburg. The little button sheath right there, he's got problems. And although he doesn't have to prove himself innocent, he's got some explaining to do. All right. We got another super chat here. All right. 3 more. We'll answer everybody's super chat here. Oh, Riley. Hey, I'm looking at going to law school. What would you say is more beneficial to be involved with? Law review or mock trial? Did you do either? Riley, my advice is it depends on what you want to do when you get out of law school. Now, I remember first year we were in a writing class. They made everybody do the little test to see if you want to be on law review. Okay. Let me give you an example of how much my desire was to be on law review. You see this pen? I would rather stick this pen in my eye than do law review. Okay. Law review, for those who don't know, each law school has a law review. And what they do is they put out usually it's an annual thing, maybe twice a year. And they ask other academic scholars, professors, to say, hey, professors, we know you've never really done real lawyer stuff most of your time. You went straight from law school to being an instructor, and you do a lot of research on really areas of law that nobody really cares about. Would you write an article for our law review that no one's really going to read? And we're going to have students act as editors to decide under the blue book method of whatever it is, salutations or whatever. I don't know what it used to be, a blue book. Where you put the comma? Well, how do you do a string cite? Really? Don't care. If you want to go on to be a United States Supreme Court justice, which means you're going to have to probably be a law clerk for United States Supreme Court justice, go to law school at Harvard or Yale, something along those lines, finish number 1 in your class and be on the Harvard Law Review or Yale Law Review. You'll probably be a Supreme Court justice someday. Yeah, wouldn't have any desire to do it. Mock trials. Now, I didn't do the mock trial team, but I took the trial class, okay? And I will tell you, the best grade I ever received in law school was in trial practice. That's what I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. I could do this. Okay. Frankly, that is the most practical thing one could do. Now, I have judged mock trials. I have asked to judge mock trials. And for those who don't know what a mock trial is, basically, everybody pretends that they're doing a case. Some say it's a criminal case or a civil case. Somebody's on the plaintiff side, the defense side, the state side, the defendant side. And they have other people act as witnesses. They have a general script and they go through and say, okay, give us your best opening statement. And then they compete? Who did the best cross-examination? Who did the best direct examination, etc.? And then people are asked to judge the competition. And I was only invited to one to judge because they needed. I was like, sure, I can go judge that. You betcha. Let's do that. It'd be a lot of fun. And I was like, hey, great job. Probably trial practice is not your forte unless you really, really practice. And so they didn't like real constructive criticism. they wanted to wish everybody, oh, that's great. You're going to be so great. Golf clap. Oh, that's so lovely. Yeah, I couldn't do it. So one, I was never invited back. And two, I haven't asked to go back, nor do I have any desire to do that. But the more practical thing to do is trial practice. And if you want to be a trial lawyer, don't mess around with mock trials. Go do a clinic. Go do an internship at the DA's office. Go do an internship at the public defender's office. Go somewhere where you actually do a clinic where they're trying to evict your client, where you actually get to go to court. You get to actually, do a case under the supervision of an attorney, actually doing it in court under their supervision. Most states have a Students Practice Act where they can practice under a practicing attorney. The client consents to it, so they know this is what they're getting. But the alternative is you don't do it. And a lot of times it's civil cases, like small claim cases, eviction type of situations. But it gives students practical experience. Somebody gets an attorney that they otherwise couldn't afford. So that's good. So my advice, Riley, if you're going to go to law school, go do the practical stuff, because you would be surprised how many attorneys go to court and don't know what the hell they're doing. It is scary. And you also find so many attorneys, when you start talking to them, they're like, oh yeah, I'm an attorney. Oh, yeah, what do you do? Oh, I do this. Oh, I could never go to court. I can't talk in front of people. I just cannot do that. Like, what? And what was this live AI, the GBMT thing the other day? Corporate attorneys, your days are done, man. Your days are done. Maybe my days are done too. We're going to have computers do this stuff and solve it. I don't know. But, I typed in there, it's like, hey, do a contract to purchase whatever. And boom, 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 boom. This computer started checking off things, everything that would be required. It looked like an experienced attorney had done it, and it was done via AI. So less and less of the corporate stuff. I think there'll always be a need for people like me, criminal defense attorneys, actually go to court, have to argue cases in front of the jury, and you still, get to do that lawyer stuff. But not a big fan of law review. If you want to go, oh, look, I'm in law review. Nobody cares. Most clients don't even know what it is. Maybe it'll get you a job somewhere. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to work at some, brown shoe, law firm, all muckety mucks. Well, where'd you go to law school? Well, I went to Harvard. Oh, really? I'm a Yale man myself. And there's law firms like that. They don't hire anybody unless they went to an Ivy League school. I'm never going to be in that crowd, nor would I want to be. Beaten up on a lot of those guys and ladies over the years in court, not physically, but everyone's working with the same stuff. They're not in my opinion, any smarter whatsoever. I swear to God. So long answer, pass on law review, maybe pass on mock trial. It's still better than nothing. It just depends on what you want to do. Like I said, you want to be a Supreme Court justice? By God, do law review. Spend your evenings, weekends, and every waking moment deciding, should I use the comma here, or should I use a semicolon? Yeah. Practical experience will take you farther anywhere down the world in the row. And these days, man, you just plug it in the computer and all the sites are already done. Like, why do we even why do they even still using free labor, so to speak, on law review? I mean, I get it when you had to go look up books and you had to go review the cases like, oh, did you properly cite it? Did he plagiarize it? Did he properly quote it from here to here? I don't know about you, but in my law school time, I mean, I had a job. I didn't have time to go check it out. I could barely keep up with the classes I was doing, working, keeping a wife happy. And my last year, my son was born. So last thing even remotely on my mind was, gee, can I go and get a excuse me, can I go and check somebody's site in their law review article that nobody is going to read other than maybe his colleagues and maybe a couple other people that maybe assisted on the paper. I'm just telling you, nobody reads that stuff. It's interesting. It's all that Ivy. Nobody reads it. So probably not the answer you wanted to hear. I'm sorry, but we give you the truth. Scott, will you be covering the Letitia Stout hearing and trial coming up starting in February? Jennifer, we certainly hope to do so. Yes, we certainly hope to do so. The Letitia Stout case, we don't know. Letitia Stout was the stepmother for Gannon Stout, who was, I think, 8 or 9. When he passed away, they found blood evidence in the home. She gave 50 different stories to the police. They find Gannon's body on an underpass in Florida. She's extradited from South Carolina. Well, en route, she didn't get to the Sam Bankman-Fried Express, where he got a private jet. She had to be transported via van, and they stopped, I think, in Lawrence, Kansas or Wichita, and she tried to escape. They got her back here to Colorado. She tried to escape. Then she was crazy. And so she's been comped, NGRI, blah, 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 blah. We'll see what's going to go on. I mean, I think there's been some talk. I haven't looked at the file in a while. I'll have to pull up my Letitia stack of stuff and see what, get an update on. I haven't looked at it in a while. I know it was coming up, but frankly, nothing has gone smoothly in the Letitia Stout case at all. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yes, we will be covering it, and which brings me to the next point. We could use an intern here at CrimeTalk during the day. It would be nearly, it's an internship. But, if you have an interest in, CrimeTalk, you'd have to come to the office. We don't do work remote. It doesn't work that way. Maybe in an emergency. We'd probably want to send you on an assignment. For those of you who remember, Julie, she left us to go fly airplanes. Who I think I've heard she's doing very, very well. Last time I spoke with her, she had already got her private pilot's license, which we encourage because for those who don't know me, I fly too. And we may have some big exciting news, but I'm not going to say anything until things actually happen, but we'll have to wait and see. But so anyways, just think that out there. If you're in there, send me an email, scott@scottreich.com. And we'll consider it. Just a little blurb about what you do, what you know about social media, how much you really want. If you want to work for free, you're probably going to go to the top of the stack. But think of all the great things you'll learn about, and you never know. You never know where it may lead. All right, next one. Mike, Scott, at this point, does law enforcement have to say if they found the knife in his apartment search? Mike, no, they don't have to release that information to the public. As you remember, there's now a gag order in place. The defense moved for the gag order. The DA agreed to it, so they filed it as a stipulation saying, Judge, we've stipulated we're not going to share anything with anybody. Even though there were already rules about that, but they weren't going to leak anything, et cetera, et cetera. But if in the search they had happened to find the knife that happened to fit the sheath here, right? Would they have to make a press release about it? No. In fact, I think they'd be specifically prohibited from doing so at this point. However, we all know how these things work. If that was found, somebody would leak it. Okay. Leaks happen all the time. Hell, we get leaks all the time. People are like, hey, Scott, did you hear about this? Here's some, oftentimes, unless you can back it up how you got it, we're not going to go with it. But, stuff that comes out sometimes, we could probably, oh my gosh, we did this and that. We knew about it first. But I'd like to be able to say, hey, this is how we know it. So, but, leaks are always good, but we'd like to have something that'll back it up. Jen, Scott, will you be at CrimeCon 23? PS legal size paper. Why? Can we stop the madness? I agree, Jen. First of all, I haven't used a 8.5 by 14 legal size pad in a long time. We use the 8.5 by 11. That's just what we do. I'm a paper guy, always going to be a paper guy. Yeah, I get the convenience of digital stuff, but when you're in court or you're here, you like to be able to touch your stuff. And if something goes wrong with the technical stuff, you always got your paper stuff. Laminate it. Take it to the field. Could save your life someday. CrimeCon 23. I'll be honest with you. I think we put it on a calendar, but I don't know when it is off the top of my head. Yeah, it was going to be in Orlando this year. Let's see here. CrimeCon 23. And for those of you who don't know what CrimeCon is, it is a true crime convention. Last year it was in Las Vegas. This year it's in we can September 21st through 23. I'm going to block that out because who doesn't like to go to Florida? I mean, Orlando, not exactly my idea of fun, just because there's all those small children there. But we love children. I mean, in a good way. My children are grown. I can't wait to have grandchildren someday. It's just everybody else's children that are small that, I certainly don't want to travel with them. But, hopefully, we still we'll have CrimeTalk 1 that'll get us there. But yeah, we'll definitely have to put that on the calendar, block that out. And last year we gave away shirts to everybody that came by. You were able to get a picture of us behind our big Crime Talk banner thing. We had a lot of fun. Hope everyone that came to meet. It was so nice to meet all the Crime Talk family members. It was great. People would show up and say, Scott, I knew you were going to be here. I drove for 8 hours. Here's a gift for you. I mean, here's a hat. I mean, it was amazing. I couldn't believe how generous people are. And we, thank them. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank all our Patreons for being Patreons. Really, really do appreciate each and every one of you. All right. I think we answered all the super chats. If you haven't become a Patreon, now's the time to do so. I think there's a link below as I understand how these things are done. And, we'll answer your questions and we'll take your calls on the secret Crime Talk number. So we were on, let's see, we had YouTube tonight that is clearly trying to demonetize us in any way they can. We're live on Facebook where we're actually crushing it these days. I think we're like 500,000 subscribers on Facebook and also on Roku TV, if you can believe that. That's right, Roku. And you have to download the app on your TV, I believe, and anywhere else. But yeah, it's growing by leaps and bounds. Now, if I could just get out of practicing law, maybe just take 1 or 2 cases, a couple of big cases a year, that'd be fabulous. And we'll just do this 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. Come on. Who only works 8 hours a day? When you love to work, you always work, right? If you love what you're doing, let's do it. I'm loving this. Been doing law 28 years now. Gosh, I can't believe it. Cannot believe it. It goes by so fast. And if things come to fruition for our Patreons, we have a little conversation we have to talk about. I'm going to share it with you because you all are, we love you. But our Patreons, they're like family. All right. All right. I want to thank everybody for watching. Have a wonderful evening, not just a great evening. And we'll see you next time on Crime Talk.